After I averaged 90-hour weeks for our record-breaking quarter, $285 million in revenue, the highest in the company's 12-year history, my director slid a glossy little card across my desk like he was handing me the keys to a new car. It was a $7 restaurant voucher. Not even for a decent restaurant. One of those generic partner cafe coupons you get stuffed into welcome packets at corporate conferences. Across the front in thick blue marker he'd written, "Great things come to those who hustle." Exclamation point and all. I stared at it for exactly 4 seconds. Long enough for the absurdity to crystallize in my mind. Long enough to remember the night I slept on the couch in the women's restroom because we were finalizing a merger across 4 time zones. Long enough to see the exhausted faces of my team on yet another Sunday morning video call. Then I smiled, wide and genuine, not because I appreciated the gesture, but because in that moment he handed me everything I needed. "You're absolutely right," I said, holding the voucher up between 2 fingers like it was a piece of fine art. "Great things really do come to those who hustle." He relaxed, completely missing the edge in my voice. "I knew you'd understand," he said. "It's not always about the paycheck, Olivia. It's about being part of something bigger." "Oh, trust me," I replied. "I'm feeling very connected to something bigger right now." He laughed, tapped the edge of my desk twice and walked out, already mentally checking off his team morale task for the week. As soon as the door clicked shut behind him, I opened my laptop, pulled up the Q3 revenue report, the one I'd spent 21 consecutive days building, stress testing, and perfecting until it told exactly the story the executive team wanted. $285 million in booked revenue, 26% above target, record-breaking margins, record customer retention, record upsells, all neatly packaged in a presentation with graphs, heat maps, and projections that made our CEO sound like a visionary on the earnings call. Next, I turned on the office scanner, placed the voucher face down and hit scan. The machine hummed, beeped once, and produced a perfect digital copy of my $7, "Thank you for sacrificing your health for corporate profits" certificate. I dragged the scanned image next to the top-line revenue slide. Adjusted the layout so the two sat side by side, perfectly aligned. Left, $285 million Q3 company revenue. Right, $7 appreciation meal, valid at select cafes only. The subject line for the email came easily. Q3 results and transition notice. Great things and those who hustle. I typed up my resignation in 6 clean, unemotional paragraphs. No drama, no accusations, no bitter rants, just a clear timeline, acknowledgement of my responsibilities and a formal end date. Then in the body of the email, just above my attached resignation letter and the revenue voucher comparison slide, I added one line. "Thank you for the opportunity to contribute to a historic quarter." The attached visual best captures how this experience has shaped my understanding of organizational values. Recipients: CEO, CFO, COO, VP of Operations, VP of Human Resources, and of course Connor Hayes, my director, copied for complete visibility. I hovered over the send button for maybe 2 seconds. Not because I was uncertain. Because I wanted to remember exactly how this moment felt. The clarity. The control. The absolute certainty that I was done being valued at $7 after delivering $285 million. Then I clicked. The email flew out of my outbox at 4:17 p.m. By 4:19 my phone started vibrating on the desk. Unknown extension. Then another. Then Connor's number. I let them all go to voicemail. At 4:28 I shut down my laptop, cleared my personal belongings from my drawers. Family photos, emergency cardigan, the blue light glasses I'd bought after too many midnight spreadsheet marathons wrecked my vision. I dropped my security badge on the keyboard and walked out. I was halfway across the parking lot, the late October wind cutting through my thin blazer when I heard it. "Olivia." His voice, sharp and panicked, cutting through the hum of distant traffic and idling engines. I didn't turn around at first. He shouted my name again, closer this time. I could hear dress shoes hitting pavement, moving fast. I stopped beside my car, watched my breath fog in the cold air, and waited for Connor Hayes, the director who just valued my 90-hour weeks at $7 and a motivational slogan, to realize exactly how expensive that little mistake was about to become. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up and explain how I got here. How I became the woman calculating 9-figure revenue with bloodshot eyes and a caffeinated heartbeat. Why a $7 voucher was the breaking point. And how that one email ended up costing Connor a lot more than he ever expected. Before that, if you've ever been handed cheap recognition instead of the raise, respect, or basic decency you deserved, hit subscribe. Stories like this aren't unusual. They're just usually buried under NDAs and polite exits. Now here's how it really started. My name is Olivia Carter. I'm 34 years old, and for the last 8 years, I was a senior financial operations analyst at a company called Vanguard Solutions Group. On paper, Vanguard is a high-growth enterprise consulting and technology firm. In reality, we sold expensive software implementations and strategic advisory services to corporations that didn't fully understand what they were buying but knew they needed to look innovative to their boards. Our pitch decks were full of terms like digital transformation, synergistic optimization, and agile scalability. Internally, we used different words to describe what we actually did: damage control and deadline juggling. I didn't start out doing damage control. I started in audit. Fresh out of graduate school with a master's in accounting and finance, I took a junior analyst role at a regional healthcare company. It was stable, predictable, mind-numbing. Invoice after invoice, compliance check after compliance check, month after month. I spent 4 years there. Learned the fundamentals inside and out. Learned how to close books without a single discrepancy. Learned how to build forecasts that actually held up under scrutiny. But I also learned something else. I wanted to be where decisions were made, not where they were merely recorded. I didn't want to just document what had already happened. I wanted to shape what would happen next. So when Vanguard Solutions Group posted an opening for a financial analyst at their headquarters, fast-growing consulting firm, aggressive expansion strategy, the promise of strategic influence, I applied immediately. I got the job. Day one, I knew I wasn't in healthcare compliance anymore. The lobby looked like it belonged in a design magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture, living green walls, a massive LED installation looping client success stories and market growth statistics. People walked around in business casual that looked carefully expensive, clutching espresso drinks and talking in clipped, urgent tones about deliverables and stakeholder alignment. My desk was on the 6th floor in a sprawling open-plan workspace. No cubicle walls, no privacy, just rows of height-adjustable desks and the constant white noise of overlapping conversations and keyboard clicks. My director back then was a woman named Angela Ramsey, early 50s, former Big Four accountant, brilliant, demanding, and most importantly, honest. "Here's the reality," she told me during my first one-on-one meeting. "We don't have enough staff. We don't have enough hours in the day, and we have executives who think moving numbers on a presentation slide is the same as changing market conditions. Our job is to keep them anchored to something resembling reality without getting ourselves fired in the process." I respected her immediately. For the first 5 years, the job was intense but fair. We worked hard. We stayed late when deadlines demanded it. We handled emergencies that arrived at 5:43 on Friday afternoons. But Angela protected us when it mattered. She pushed back against impossible timelines. She told the CFO when projections were unrealistic fantasy. She made sure performance bonuses reflected actual contribution, not just seniority or politics. Then 2.5 years ago, Angela left. She got recruited by a competitor with a bigger title, better compensation, and her own team. I don't blame her. We had cake in the conference room. There were speeches, handshakes, email chains full of "you'll be missed," and we couldn't have done it without you. A week later, the company announced her replacement. Director of Financial Operations, Connor Hayes. 31 years old, MBA from a good but not great program, 3 years at a mid-tier consulting firm, 18 months as a strategy lead at a startup that folded quietly after burning through its series of funding. On his first day, Connor held an all-hands meeting for the finance operations team. He stood at the front of the glass-walled conference room in a navy suit that looked like it came straight from an influencer's wardrobe, perfectly tailored, perfectly pressed. His presentation was full of phrases like operational excellence, proactive efficiency, streamlined reporting cycles, and data-driven accountability. He talked about bringing a performance mindset to finance. He talked about empowering leadership with real-time strategic insight. He did not talk about workload sustainability. He did not talk about team capacity. He did not ask a single question about how long it currently took to produce the reports and forecasts the executive team demanded every single week. After the meeting, he pulled me aside in the hallway. I've heard great things about you, Olivia, he said, flashing a smile that probably worked wonders in business school networking events. Angela said you were the backbone of this operation. I'm counting on you to help drive this transformation forward. Translation. I'm going to pile more work on you than is physically sustainable and call it professional development. I smiled and nodded, because that's what you do when a new director shows up and your rent depends on continued employment. At first, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. Everyone deserves a learning curve. I walked him through our financial models, explained the nuances between revenue recognition in our consulting contracts versus our software licensing agreements, showed him where the potential problems were buried. Deals the sales team had pushed through at quarter end with questionable discount structures, renewal assumptions that were optimistic at best, cost allocations that made one division look artificially profitable while another absorbed the burden. He listened, took notes, asked reasonably intelligent questions. Then he started implementing changes. The first warning sign came when he optimized our reporting structure. His words, not mine. We're going to start publishing a Monday morning executive dashboard, he told us in a team meeting. Just a quick snapshot. Key performance indicators, week-over-week trends, nothing too complex. Where is that data coming from? I asked. We'll pull from the existing models, he said. Shouldn't be a heavy lift. Those existing models are barely finalized in time for monthly close, I said. And they're structured for monthly reporting, not weekly snapshots. We don't have automation for most of those metrics. Someone will have to manually adjust inputs, validate calculations, and reconcile discrepancies. He waved that off like I'd mentioned a minor formatting issue. We'll work out the process, he said. This is critical for leadership visibility. Critical for leadership visibility. Those 4 words cost me 14 hours every single week. Within 3 months, our workload looked like this. Monthly financial close, still requiring 12 to 14-hour days for the first week of every month. Quarterly business planning, unchanged plus expanded scenario modeling. Weekly executive dashboards, consuming Sundays and late Monday nights. Ad hoc analysis requests constant because executives now knew we could generate polished visualizations quickly. Our team of 7 shrank to 6 when one senior analyst left for a corporate finance role at a pharmaceutical company. We didn't backfill the position. We need to stay lean, Connor told us. It'll be excellent for your growth to take on expanded responsibilities. Translation. We can't justify another headcount to leadership, so everyone here needs to do 1.3 jobs indefinitely. The first quarter under Connor's leadership, I averaged about 62 hours per week. Difficult but manageable. By the third quarter, it had crept up to 73. By the fifth quarter, Q3 of this year, we crossed into genuinely unsustainable territory. 90-hour weeks sustained for 3 consecutive months. You don't really notice the shift at first. You just stay a little later one evening. Come in a little earlier the next morning. Work through lunch just today. Take calls from home just this once. Then suddenly you realize 3 things are simultaneously true. You can't remember the last time you cooked an actual meal at home. Your friends have stopped inviting you to things because you always decline, and your body feels like you're perpetually recovering from an illness that never quite arrives. During that record $285 million quarter, my average weekday looked like this. Wake up at 5:45 a.m., check emails from overnight international operations. Log into work systems by 6:30. Work until 8:45 p.m. most nights, later on critical deadline days. Eat whatever was fastest, usually something microwaved at my desk or takeout consumed one-handed while reviewing financial projections. Get home around 9:30 or 10:15. Answer a few more emails. Collapse into bed. Weekends weren't weekends. We had a dark joke on the team. Saturday is for catching up. Sunday is for panicking about Monday. There are details that sound small but aren't. Like the time my mother called me 4 times in one afternoon because I hadn't responded to her messages for 6 days and she was genuinely worried something had happened to me. I saw the calls. I even picked up my phone to call her back. Then something came in marked urgent from the sales operations team, asking for a last-minute pricing analysis before their Tuesday client presentation. I thought I'll call her right after this. I didn't. Not for 3 more days. Multiply that by weeks, months, an entire record-breaking quarter. $285 million of revenue that didn't materialize through magic. It came from late nights, skipped meals, abandoned personal lives, and a finance team that quietly sacrificed everything else so executives could sit on quarterly earnings calls and talk about operational excellence and strategic positioning. The strange thing is, the work itself still mattered to me. I genuinely liked the intellectual challenge. I took real pride in building financial models that accurately reflected complex business realities. I got a peculiar satisfaction from catching errors before they made us look incompetent in front of the board. I cared deeply about the quality of what I produced. That's what made it dangerous. You can only exploit people who care for so long before something fundamental breaks. For me, the first crack wasn't financial or professional. It was physical. One night, 2:18 a.m. on a Thursday to be exact, I woke up with my heart racing. Not metaphorically. Literally pounding like I just finished sprinting up 6 flights of stairs. I sat up too fast and the room tilted sideways. Cold sweat. Hands trembling. For about 45 seconds I genuinely thought I might be having a cardiac event. I'm 34, I thought. This is absurd. I sat there in the darkness of my bedroom, counting heartbeats, trying to slow my breathing. It eventually calmed down. I told myself it was just stress, just too much caffeine, just too many hours staring at blue-lit screens. Then I did something profoundly stupid. I got out of bed, opened my laptop, and went back to work, because the Q3 forecast presentation wasn't finished yet and the CFO wanted an additional scenario where we assumed 15% customer churn instead of 11% because the macroeconomic environment is uncertain and we need to model downside risk. That night should have been my wake-up call. It wasn't. The real wake-up call came a few weeks later, and it looked like a $7 coupon with a motivational slogan written in blue marker. We hit the $285 million quarter through a combination of exceptional sales execution and sheer brute force. I'd love to pretend it was all brilliant strategy and flawless planning. It wasn't. It was the sales team pulling forward contracts by offering aggressive discounts we'd argue about in post-quarter reviews. It was customer success teams pushing renewals hard, calling in favors and goodwill. It was operations agreeing to implementation timelines that would absolutely crush their staff. And it was finance, meaning me and my chronically overworked team, building, refining, validating, and defending the narrative that made it all look seamless and intentional. In the final week of the quarter, I slept a total of 16 hours across 7 days. Not per night. Total. I remember sitting in the office at 1:12 a.m., staring at a number in a spreadsheet cell that wouldn't reconcile with 4 other linked reports no matter how many times I traced the formulas backward, and thinking, if I just disappeared right now, would anyone even notice until Monday morning? We closed the quarter successfully. The numbers looked phenomenal. The CEO was ecstatic. He sent an all-company email full of exclamation points and phrases like, historic achievement, and game-changing growth trajectory. They attached the revenue chart showing a steep upward line with a little celebration emoji. At the bottom, a generic sentence. Special thanks to every team member who worked tirelessly to make this possible. No names. No specific recognition. Just a blanket statement that tried to cover everyone and ended up recognizing no one. The next morning, there was a brief celebration in the main break room. Someone had ordered cupcakes with company-colored frosting and hung a banner that read, Q3 Champions. The CEO gave a 4-minute speech about momentum and market positioning. The COO said, couldn't have done it without our finance operations team, and looked vaguely in our direction while applauding generically. Then people grabbed sugar, took photos for social media, and returned to their desks. No bonus announcements. No promotion discussions. No concrete rewards. Just frosting and a banner. At 3:12 p.m. that afternoon, Connor called me into his office. I walked in, exhausted but artificially energized from too much coffee, and saw them immediately. A small stack of glossy vouchers on his desk, company logo, partner restaurant branding, the kind of promotional item you'd expect to see in a new employee welcome kit. Olivia, he said, smiling broadly, I wanted to personally recognize your contribution this quarter. None of this would have been remotely possible without your dedication and expertise. He picked up one of the vouchers and uncapped a blue marker. Actually uncapped it right there in front of me. I watched him write in neat, cheerful handwriting, great things come to those who hustle. Then he added his initials and a tiny exclamation point. He slid the card across the desk toward me. It landed next to my hands. $7 toward any purchase at Cafe Collective Partners. It read in small print underneath his handwritten message. $7. Not even enough to cover a complete lunch in downtown where our office was located. Maybe a sandwich without a beverage. Maybe 2/3 of one of their overpriced grain bowls. I looked up at him. He was genuinely smiling. Not mocking. Not malicious. Just completely, stunningly oblivious. In his mind, this was thoughtful. This was meaningful. This was leadership showing appreciation. "These are just small tokens," he said, gesturing to the stack on his desk. "We're giving them to select individuals who really went above and beyond expectations." I imagined him handing these out like participation trophies while the company posted record profits built on systematic burnout. "Thank you," I said, and I meant it. Not for the voucher. For the clarity. For the perfect physical symbol of exactly how this company, and this director actually valued my work. I picked up the card, turned it over slowly in my hands. "You're absolutely right," I said, letting a slow smile spread across my face. "Great things really do come to those who hustle." He exhaled with visible relief, his shoulders relaxing. "I knew you'd get it," he said. "You have such a fantastic attitude, Olivia. That's exactly why you're going to continue succeeding here." He had absolutely no idea how far I was about to go or how quickly. I walked back to my desk, sat down carefully, placed the voucher beside my keyboard, and opened the Q3 revenue report. I looked at the $285 million figure at the top of the executive summary. Then I looked at the $7 amount printed on the voucher. For the first time in months, I laughed. Not a bitter, exhausted chuckle. A full, genuine, incredulous laugh that made my coworker Natalie glance over with raised eyebrows. "You okay?" she mouthed silently. "I'm perfect," I mouthed back. And I was, because something fundamental had shifted. A part of me that had been desperately clinging to the belief that hard work and excellence would eventually be recognized and rewarded finally let go completely. I pressed the power button on my desktop scanner, fed the voucher through carefully. The machine hummed and beeped. A perfect digital image appeared on my monitor. I dragged it next to the revenue report, aligned them precisely, and labeled the comparison slide, Q3 Value Exchange. Organizational achievement versus individual recognition. For half a second, I considered adding commentary, maybe a footnote with ROI calculations showing approximately $0.008 per hour of overtime worked. But it didn't need explanation. The image communicated everything. I saved the file as Q3 Results and Personal Transition O. Carter. Then I opened a new email. There are moments in life when you know with absolute certainty that you're crossing a point of no return. Hitting send on that email was one of them. To CO, CFO, COO, VP of Operations, VP of Human Resources CC. Connor Hayes. Subject. Q3 Results and Transition Notice. Great things and those who hustle. Body. Dear leadership team. Attached you will find two images that together summarize my experience of Q3. On the left, the official report showing our record-breaking $285 million quarter. On the right, the tangible expression of appreciation I received for averaging 90-hour workweeks to help deliver that outcome. This is not sent in anger but in clarity. Effective 2 weeks from today, I am resigning from my position as Senior Financial Operations Analyst at Vanguard Solutions Group. I will use this transition period to thoroughly document my current responsibilities, ensure smooth handover of active projects, and make myself available for any necessary knowledge transfer. I care deeply about the work I've done here and the colleagues I've been fortunate to work alongside. However, this quarter has made one truth impossible to ignore. The way this organization values effort, sacrifice, and expertise is fundamentally misaligned with how I intend to live the next decade of my professional life. Thank you for the opportunities I've had over the past 8 years. I hope the attached images are received in the spirit they are sent, as an honest reflection of a culture that can and should do significantly better. Regards, Olivia Carter. I attached the comparison slide. Hovered over the send button. Then I clicked. For 17 p.m. The reactions were immediate and chaotic. At 4:19 my internal messaging system lit up. From Natalie, Olivia, what did you just do? From Paul in accounting, did you really just send that to the entire executive team? From someone I barely knew in sales operations, absolute legend. My phone buzzed with a call from Connor. I let it ring out. He called again. And again. I silenced my phone, closed my laptop, grabbed my bag and dropped my security badge on the keyboard. People were watching as I walked down the long aisle between desks. Some looked shocked. Some looked impressed. Some looked like they'd just witnessed the final scene of a movie they hadn't realized they were watching. I didn't say goodbye. Not because I didn't care about my coworkers. Because I knew if I stopped, someone would try to convince me to reconsider. Let's talk about this. Maybe we can work something out. We'll look at compensation adjustments. Well, they'd had their chance. They'd given me cupcakes and a coupon. They'd made their valuation crystal clear. And now I was making mine. I stepped into the elevator. The doors closed. I leaned back against the wall and exhaled slowly, deeply, completely. The lobby felt different on the way out. Same polished floors, same reception desk, same promotional videos playing on the oversized screens. But for the first time in 8 years, I wasn't rushing through while mentally calculating the next deliverable deadline. I was leaving. Permanently. As I crossed the parking lot, the late afternoon sun was sinking behind the neighboring office towers, casting long angular shadows between rows of vehicles. I hit the unlock button on my key fob. Heard the chirp. I was reaching for the door handle when I heard it. Olivia. His voice, sharp with panic, heels of dress shoes hitting pavement. I turned slowly. Connor was half running, half stumbling between parked cars. His suit jacket was slightly askew. His usually perfectly styled hair had a few pieces out of place. He looked less like the polished director from his introductory presentation and more like someone whose carefully constructed reality had just collided with consequences. Wait, he called, one hand raised as if he could physically prevent me from leaving. We need to talk. I leaned against my car door, crossed my arms and waited. He reached me slightly out of breath. Why would you send that? He demanded, skipping past any greeting. Do you have any idea what you just did? I sent an accurate summary of my experience, I said calmly. His eyes flashed with something between anger and desperation. You embarrassed me in front of the entire executive leadership team, he said. Do you understand how that email makes us look? I tilted my head slightly. Depends on who's reading it, I said. To me it looks accurate. That's not fair, he snapped. The voucher was just a symbolic gesture. You know how budget constraints work. We can't just hand out bonuses every quarter. Connor, I said evenly, I didn't ask for a bonus. Then what do you want? He asked, frustration edging into something that sounded almost like genuine confusion. What I want, I repeated slowly. I thought about the nights hunched over financial models until my vision blurred. The heart-pounding wake-up at 2:18 a.m. The missed calls from family. The hollow praise in company-wide emails. The cupcakes. The $7 coupon. I wanted leadership that noticed 90-hour weeks before a record quarter forced them to pretend to care, I said. I wanted a director who recognized that going above and beyond actually meant systematic burnout. I wanted someone in your position to push back when executives treated human beings like adjustable expense lines in a budget model. He folded his arms defensively. You think I don't push back? He said. You have no idea what kind of pressure we're under from the executive level. The targets come from above. I don't set them. I have to deliver results with the headcount I'm given. And your solution, I said, was to hand me a $7 voucher and write an inspirational quote on it. It was a gesture, he said again, like repetition would somehow change reality. It was a message, I replied. Loud and clear. The problem isn't the amount, Connor. It's that the company believes people should be grateful for crumbs while executives celebrate record profits and market positioning. He flinched slightly. I talked to HR, he said abruptly, changing tactics. We can look at a title change. Senior manager maybe. And a compensation adjustment, something in the range of 12%. It's not finalized yet, but... I'm not negotiating, I said. He blinked. What? I'm not negotiating, I repeated clearly. I'm leaving. You can't just walk away from 8 years, he said, his voice rising slightly with disbelief. Think about your career trajectory. Think about your professional references. I have 8 years of references, I said. And an email chain where the CFO personally congratulated me on the financial models that enabled one of the strongest quarters in company history. I think my references will be fine. You won't find another company like Vanguard, he said as if this was somehow a compelling argument. That's exactly the point, I replied. He stared at me, searching for some angle, some leverage. You're making a serious mistake, he said finally. Maybe, I said. But it's my mistake to make. And after the last year, I'd rather risk being underemployed than continue being systematically undervalued. You think this is about value? He said. This is business. It's numbers and margins and competitive positioning. That's exactly the problem, I said. You think this is just numbers. You forgot they're attached to actual human beings with finite energy and lives outside of quarterly revenue targets. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced down reflexively. For a split second, his professional mask dropped completely. I saw it clearly. A notification preview from the CFO. Subject line visible. We need to discuss Olivia's email immediately. He looked back up at me. At least come back inside and talk to them, he said, his tone shifting toward something closer to pleading. They're requesting a meeting. There's room to improve things if you just... No, I said. Olivia, be reasonable. Connor, I said quietly, this is me being reasonable for the first time in a very long time. We stood there in the parking lot, cold October wind cutting between the vehicles. He was still in director mode, negotiating, reframing, searching for an angle. I was done. You'll regret this, he said finally, grasping for some final thread of control. Maybe, I said. But I promise you something. You will regret that voucher long before I regret this decision. His face flushed. You really think one email and a scanned coupon are going to change anything? He said. No, I said. I think they revealed everything that needed revealing. He didn't have a response for that. I unlocked my car, opened the door and got in. As I pulled out of the parking spot, I saw him in the rearview mirror, standing alone between rows of vehicles, phone buzzing in his hand, staring after someone who was no longer his problem to manage. Leaving a job after 8 years doesn't feel real at first. You expect your body to keep moving on autopilot. You expect to wake up at 5:45 and reach for your work laptop. You expect the constant low-level anxiety humming under your skin. That first night I slept 9 hours straight. No 2 a.m. heart pounding. No dreams about broken formulas or missed deadlines. The next morning I woke up at 8:37. Sunlight filtering through my bedroom curtains. Actual silence. Real, complete silence. My first instinct was to panic. I should be working. I should be checking emails. I stopped myself. No, I shouldn't. Not anymore. I made coffee. Real coffee, not grabbed on the way to my car. Ate breakfast at my own kitchen table instead of hunched over a keyboard. Called my mother. She answered on the first ring. Are you alive? She asked, half joking but with real concern underneath. Very much alive, I said. She was quiet for a moment. What happened? We talked for 53 minutes. About work, about the email, about the voucher, about everything. When I finished explaining, she was silent for several seconds. I'm proud of you, she said finally. I've been watching you disappear into that job for 2 years. I was starting to think you'd forgotten you're allowed to have a life. The call with her that morning did something no amount of sleep could have accomplished. It reminded me that my identity was larger than quarterly revenue targets and financial forecasts. After we hung up, I opened my email. Not my work email. My personal account. There were already messages waiting. From former coworkers. From vendors I'd worked with over the years. From, surprisingly, 2 people on the executive leadership team. The CFO's message was brief. Olivia, your email yesterday was illuminating in ways I'm certain you intended. For what it's worth, I did not see that voucher before it was distributed. I cannot change your decision, but I want you to know that your contributions here were noticed and genuinely valued at levels higher than your direct management. If you ever need a reference or want to discuss opportunities elsewhere, please reach out. Richard. The VP of Human Resources message was longer, more corporate, filled with words like feedback, culture, and continuous improvement opportunities. I skimmed it. It ended with, we will be conducting a comprehensive review of our recognition and workload management practices as a direct result of the perspective you shared. Would they actually follow through? Maybe. Maybe not. Either way, it wasn't my responsibility anymore. For the first week of my notice period, I went back to the office every day. I'm not the burn everything down type. I documented my models thoroughly. recorded detailed walkthrough videos, left a comprehensive roadmap of current processes, potential issues and hidden complexities. Not for Connor's sake. For the people still on the team. For Natalie. For Paul. For the junior analyst who joined 8 months ago and probably thought this level of chaos was normal in corporate finance. Connor avoided me for the first 3 days. Our only interactions were transactional and brief. Can you send me the latest forecast version? It's in the shared drive, same location as always. On Thursday of that week he stopped by my desk. Can we talk in my office? He asked quietly. I followed him in. He closed the door. I talked to HR again, he said. They're willing to adjust your exit package. Additional 3 weeks of severance. We can label it transition assistance. Connor, I said, I'm not staying. It's not about staying, he said quickly. It's about closure. Optics. The email you sent created questions. People throughout the company are talking. Good, I said. They should be talking. He flinched. You've put me in an extremely difficult position, he said. Upper management is asking why my team feels undervalued and overworked. Maybe they should be asking why your team is averaging 75-hour weeks, I replied. And why you thought a $7 voucher was appropriate recognition for delivering record-breaking results. His jaw tightened. You keep coming back to that, he said. It was just a symbol. A small gesture of appreciation. Exactly, I said. A symbol. And symbols matter, Connor. They communicate what you actually value. He was quiet for a moment. HR asked if you would be willing to retract or modify your email, he said carefully. Not the resignation itself. Just the comparison image. They believe the visual is inflammatory. Let me make sure I understand, I said slowly. The problem isn't that what I showed them is true. The problem is that everyone can see it. He didn't answer. Connor, I said, I'm not retracting anything. I didn't lie. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't manipulate data. I put 2 factual pieces of information side by side and let people draw their own conclusions. You realize this might close doors for you professionally, he said quietly. People talk across companies. Reputation matters in this industry. Good, I said. If this closes doors at companies that operate like this one, then it's saving me time and energy I would have wasted applying there. He looked at me for a long moment. You used to be so collaborative, he said. What changed? 90-hour weeks changed me, I said. And one very clear symbol of exactly what those weeks were worth to this organization. He didn't call me into his office again after that conversation. My last day at Vanguard Solutions Group was strangely anticlimactic. No farewell party. No card passed around collecting signatures. A few coworkers stopped by my desk throughout the day. Some hugged me. Some shook my hand. More than one whispered, "Thank you for sending that email." Someone needed to say it out loud. Connor sent a brief message to the entire team at 2:45 p.m. Today is Olivia's last day with Vanguard Solutions Group. Please join me in thanking her for her years of service and wishing her success in her future endeavors. No mention of the record quarter. No mention of the systems and processes I'd built. No mention of the fact that they were losing the person who could answer the CFO's late-night what-if scenario questions without breaking a sweat. At 4 p.m. I packed the last of my belongings into a cardboard box. Took one final look around the 6th floor. The rows of desks. The burnout quietly happening behind dual monitors and motivational posters. The performance metrics displayed on wall-mounted screens. Then I walked out into the parking lot, into the late afternoon light, into the life I was actively choosing rather than the one I'd drifted into through inertia and misplaced loyalty. Connor's sprint across the parking lot hadn't changed my decision. If anything, it had confirmed everything. The job search wasn't simple or fast. 8 years at one company looks like admirable loyalty to some hiring managers. To others it looks like stagnation or lack of ambition. I had interviews with 4 companies in the first 6 weeks. A rapidly growing financial technology startup that wanted someone who could move fast and break things. Translation. Another Vanguard situation with even less structure. A private equity-backed consulting firm that promised substantial upside in exchange for 85-plus-hour weeks. Immediate hard pass. A regional manufacturing company with stable operations but limited growth trajectory. Interesting but not quite right. A mid-sized healthcare technology firm with a reputation for being stable, professional, and genuinely committed to work-life balance. I chose the healthcare technology company. During the final interview with their CFO, I told the complete truth. Not a dramatized version. Just facts. I burned out, I said. I spent a year working 90-hour weeks. It wasn't sustainable physically or mentally. He didn't look uncomfortable or judgmental. I did that in my early 30s, he said, at an investment bank. I have former colleagues from that era who are on their third marriage, dealing with serious health issues they shouldn't have at 47. I made a conscious decision not to build that kind of environment here. What's your management philosophy? I asked directly. Work intelligently when it matters, he said. But if I'm compensating you for 40 hours per week and consistently getting 65, I consider that a failure of my leadership and resource planning, not a badge of anyone's dedication. He offered me the position a week later. Senior Manager of Financial Planning and Analysis. Salary modestly higher than what I'd earned at Vanguard. Significantly better benefits package. Explicit, written boundaries around expected work hours and on-call availability. I've been there for 9 months now. We still have intense periods. Month-end close. Annual budget cycles. Unexpected regulatory audit preparations. There are weeks I work 53 hours, sometimes 58. But it's the exception, not the baseline expectation. And nobody has ever handed me a discount coupon and called it recognition. Every now and then I hear things about Vanguard through the professional network. Natalie and I meet for coffee once a month. She keeps me updated. Remember the Monday morning executive dashboard? She asked during our last coffee meeting. They've expanded it. Now it's a daily morning briefing. They're calling it the Leadership Pulse Report. How's that working out? I asked. He gave me a look that communicated everything. They've hired 4 new analysts in the past 9 months, she said. None of them has lasted longer than 7 months. One of them called it organizationally unsustainable in their exit interview. Did anything actually change after my email? I asked. They stopped giving out vouchers, she said with a slight smile. Now it's branded water bottles and motivational desk calendars. We both laughed, but then her expression turned more serious. HR did conduct a comprehensive workplace culture survey after you left, she said. Anonymous. Asked detailed questions about workload, recognition, burnout, management effectiveness. The results were apparently quite damaging. How damaging? I asked. Damaging enough that the CFO mentioned it in a company-wide town hall meeting, she said. Damaging enough that they hired an external consulting firm to conduct a full culture assessment and make recommendations. Do you think anything will genuinely change? I asked. He shrugged. Maybe not immediately. Maybe not completely. But at least now they can't pretend they don't know. Before your email they could maintain plausible deniability. We had no idea people felt this way. Nobody ever said anything. You took away that excuse. Later as I walked back to my car I thought about that conversation. So often in corporate environments, the real problem isn't that leadership doesn't care about employee well-being. It's that they don't want to know because knowing would force them to acknowledge that their systems, their incentive structures, their staffing decisions, their aggressive growth targets are built on the unspoken assumption that some people will quietly sacrifice far more than they ever agreed to sacrifice. My email didn't fix that fundamental problem, but it removed their ability to ignore it comfortably. Here's what this entire experience taught me, and what anyone reading this needs to understand clearly. If your body is sending you distress signals, listen carefully. Heart pounding at 2 a.m. isn't just stress or too much caffeine. It's your entire system warning you that you're operating far beyond sustainable limits. Recognition without genuine respect is just marketing. Cupcakes, vouchers, motivational slogans, branded merchandise. They're inexpensive ways to paper over deeper structural issues. Real respect shows up in workload management, compensation, boundaries, and honest communication about expectations. You teach organizations how to value your time by what you accept. By staying silent. By accepting crumbs and calling it professional development. By treating systematic exploitation as paying your dues. You reinforce the exact system that's draining you. You are not obligated to stay anywhere you're being punished for caring. Taking pride in excellent work is admirable. Allowing that pride to be weaponized against you is not. The $7 voucher didn't make me resign. It revealed a truth about an organization I should have left sooner. It took 90-hour weeks and a cheap piece of plastic with a motivational slogan to finally make it impossible for me to lie to myself about what I was worth to them. The day I scanned that voucher next to the revenue report, I stopped participating in the story where overwork equals loyalty and exhaustion equals commitment. I started writing a different narrative entirely. One where appreciating the small things means 8 hours of sleep. Dinner with family that isn't interrupted by urgent work messages. Weekends that actually function as recovery time. Professional environments that respect the fact that you're a complete human being, not just a resource to be optimized and extracted until depleted. If you're watching this and thinking about your own version of that voucher, the tiny, insulting gesture of appreciation that made your stomach turn and your perspective shift, pay very close attention. That's your moment of clarity arriving. You don't have to send a dramatic email with a scanned comparison image. You don't have to orchestrate a parking lot confrontation. But you also don't have to stay in an environment where your 90 hours are valued at $7 and a slogan written in blue marker. You get exactly one life. One finite amount of energy and time and health. Spend it somewhere that genuinely understands that basic truth. Several months after I left Vanguard, I received an unexpected message through professional networking. It was from someone I didn't know personally, a woman named Claire who worked in operations at Vanguard. Her message was brief. I saw your email before you left. I've been at this company for 6 years. I averaged 72-hour weeks last quarter. Today I submitted my resignation. Thank you for showing me it was possible to leave. Thank you for making it clear that we're allowed to expect better. I read that message 3 times. Then I saved it. Because that's the thing about speaking truth clearly, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it might damage your professional reputation, even when people tell you you're being unreasonable or dramatic or short-sighted. You give other people permission to see their own situations more clearly. You give them language for things they've been feeling but couldn't quite articulate. You show them that the exit door exists and that walking through it is a valid choice. I don't know what happened to Connor Hayes after I left. I don't particularly care. I hope he learned something from the experience. I hope he recognized that handing out $7 vouchers while extracting 90-hour weeks isn't leadership. It's exploitation with a motivational slogan attached. But whether he learned anything or not isn't my responsibility. What I do know is this: I learned something crucial. I learned that I'm worth more than $285 million in revenue divided by 90-hour weeks divided by a $7 voucher. I learned that excellent work and professional dedication don't require martyrdom. I learned that choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. And I learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply show people exactly what's happening. No editorializing. No dramatic accusations. Just the facts placed side by side, and the space for people to draw their own conclusions. That's what I did. I put $285 million next to $7. I put 90-hour weeks next to a motivational slogan. I put organizational achievement next to individual recognition. And I let the image speak for itself. The executives saw it. Connor saw it. Sure saw it. And most importantly, the other people quietly burning out in that organization saw it too. Some of them are still there making their own calculations about what they're willing to accept. Some of them have left, choosing different paths. And some of them are probably still deciding, weighing their options, building their exit strategies. Wherever they are in that process, they know one thing now that they didn't know before. They're not alone in seeing the disconnect. They're not crazy for thinking the math doesn't add up. And they're not obligated to accept that a $7 voucher is adequate appreciation for sacrificing their health, their relationships, and their lives outside of quarterly revenue targets. That email I sent wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about burning bridges or destroying reputations or creating drama. It was about clarity. It was about making visible what had been quietly accepted as normal. It was about refusing to pretend that everything was fine when everything was absolutely not fine. And if that makes me difficult or uncooperative or not a team player in some people's eyes, I'm completely at peace with that assessment. Because I'd rather be seen as difficult while living a sustainable life than be seen as dedicated while slowly destroying myself for an organization that valued my year of 90-hour weeks at $7. If you're in a situation right now where you're working unsustainable hours, where you're sacrificing your health and relationships, where you're being told that cupcakes and branded merchandise are adequate recognition for extraordinary effort. I want you to hear this clearly. You deserve better. You're worth more. And you're allowed to leave. You don't need permission from your director. You don't need approval from HR. You don't need to wait until you're completely burned out or having panic attacks at 2 in the morning. You're allowed to recognize that the exchange is unfair and make a different choice. Will it be scary? Probably. Will it be uncertain? Definitely. Will some people tell you you're making a mistake? Almost certainly. But I promise you this. 5 years from now, you won't regret choosing yourself. You'll only regret the time you spent accepting less than you deserved. That $7 voucher was the best gift Connor Hayes ever gave me. Not because it was valuable or meaningful or appreciated. Because it was so perfectly, crystallinely clear in what it represented. It removed all ambiguity. It made the truth impossible to ignore. $285 million in revenue. 90-hour weeks for 3 consecutive months. $7 and a motivational slogan. That's the equation. That's the exchange rate. That's what my health and time and expertise were worth to that organization. And the moment I saw it clearly, the decision became simple. I scanned the voucher. I attached it to the revenue report. I wrote 6 paragraphs. I clicked send. I walked out. Best decision I ever made. If you've stayed with this story all the way to the end, thank you. If it resonated with you, if it reminded you of your own situation, if it gave you clarity or courage or just the knowledge that you're not alone in feeling undervalued and overworked, hit that subscribe button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Stories like this aren't rare. They're happening in offices and organizations everywhere, every single day. They're just usually hidden behind professional silence and non-disclosure agreements and the fear of damaging your reputation. I chose to speak clearly instead. I chose to show the truth instead of hiding it. And I chose myself instead of continuing to sacrifice for an organization that had already shown me exactly what I was worth to them. You can make that choice too. Whenever you're ready. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next one.